President Trump is intensifying his threats to take control of Greenland. Now he says his pressure campaign is in part due to not winning the Nobel Peace Prize. His message to Norway's prime minister and NATO allies is that he no longer feels obliged to, quote, think purely of peace. ABC's Mary Bruce reports from the White House.
Tonight, President Trump lashing out at NATO allies as he escalates his push for Greenland, saying because he did not win the Nobel Peace Prize, he no longer feels, quote, an obligation to think purely of peace. It came after Norway's prime minister texted Trump pleading we all should work to take this down and de-escalate, proposing a phone call to talk it out. Instead, Trump texting back, "Dear Jonas, considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars plus, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace. Although it will always be predominant, but can now think about what is good and proper for the United States of America." He's very preoccupied with the Nobel Peace Prize, Norway's prime minister told reporters, and I've explained to him many times that it's an award given by a Norwegian committee, not by the Norwegian government. America's NATO allies rattled as Trump sounds increasingly determined to own Greenland, which has been part of the Kingdom of Denmark for more than 300 years. In Copenhagen, thousands taking to the streets, wearing Trump's signature red hats, these saying "Make America Go Away." 8 NATO countries, including France, Germany, and the UK, moving forces to Greenland as a show of support. Over the weekend, Trump threatening new tariffs on those countries, 10% in February, jumping to 25% in June, until a, quote, deal is reached for the complete and total purchase of Greenland.
The use of tariffs against allies is completely wrong.
Our thanks to Mary Bruce. For more on the pushback against President Trump's pressure campaign to acquire and control Greenland, I want to bring in former minister and member of the Danish parliament, Ida Auken. Thank you so much for joining us. In a piece that you wrote for the New York Times, you argue that Denmark is already open to discussions to strengthen Arctic security, but that territorial claims between allies only allow our enemies to divide us. Is there any merit to Trump's claims that Greenland needs to be more secure from Russia and China?
Well, definitely, we all need to look at the Arctic as an area that is potentially dangerous. And Denmark has tried for a long time to get all of NATO to say we should do more in the Arctic. It's actually been the Americans that have been hesitating inside NATO. So we started just acting on our own. The last year, we've invested more than $14 billion in capabilities that can be used in the Arctic. So definitely we need to do more.
Let's talk about this extraordinary text message Trump sent to Norway's prime minister. President Trump brought up that he didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize and that because of that, he, quote, no longer feels an obligation to think purely of peace. Curious your reaction to his comments.
Well, I think we are all reading this message with some kind of surprise, or maybe just trying to figure out what's going on, because it's not really a normal way of communicating with other people. It's not a normal way to do diplomacy. And, you know, we've been friends with the U.S. for so many years. I love Americans. I love the U.S., but we feel treated in a little bit of a disrespectful way, to put it mildly.
We've also heard outrage from Denmark as well as other European allies in reaction to Trump's 10% tariff threat. How might they retaliate?
So tariffs are not a good weapon because they hit your own consumers. They are the ones paying the tariffs. Right now, we see Americans having a lot of problems buying groceries, buying eggs, buying all kinds of stuff. And these tariffs are just making it worse. So Europe is really thinking very hard, do we want to retaliate and put tariffs on American products? Because that's going to hit our own consumers. But we can. We have a tool in our toolbox called the bazooka. Sorry for the name. That's what it's called. And we can retaliate up to around $93 billion put on American companies. But honestly, we don't want to put our consumers through this, so it's a hard discussion for us, but we're not going to put up with everything.
As you know, several NATO countries, including Denmark, have sent troops into Greenland. Do you see ultimately the U.S. using force in order to try to take the island?
Look, I've learned one thing with Trump, and that is always to take him seriously. And of course, we are hoping for the best and preparing for everything.
Do you have a message for President Trump?
Well, Trump, we are with you. We want to be your allies. We have the same adversaries in the Arctic, Russia mainly, but also China. We are investing. You got your win. Let's work together instead of threatening each other. It's really making all of the West less strong. We should be together and not fighting each other. I'm sure that Putin and Xi are just looking at us right now with a small smile on their face, and we shouldn't be doing this.
Ida Auken, we thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you joining us.